Does religion demand conformity? I would suggest that most people would answer without hesitation, yes. Some would even say religion is conformity. It's all about rules, fitting in. Even in the best case scenario, where it's a healthy form of religion and it's positive elements, it's about community, it's about tradition, it's about rituals, family, values. The negative part of religion we'll talk about soon, there then conformity would be seen also as a negative as well. But look, does baseball demand conformity? Does the military demand conformity? Does a musical etiquette demand conformity? I mean, any system has a certain element of rules and boundaries. What is acceptable? How do you identify? Does a brand demand conformity in a company culture? So what do we do with our free-spiritedness? What do we do with that independent voice within us? Is conformity the same as herd mentality? So these are critical and important questions. I want to talk about it on a personal note, and you'll see the connection to the biblical event that I want to address, which is about, of course, Abraham. So, growing up in a very traditional and religious environment, I was struggling with this through my teen years. When you're a young child, you follow whatever they tell you to do. Even then, you may have some rebellious side to you, but it's still, you don't have the tools to just be yourself, so to speak. But as a teenager, I struggled with this because on one hand, I was exposed to a lot of intense and even pressure, certain rules, how you dress, how you behave. I mean, the basic rules of even going to school, we all have that. But in addition, in a religious environment, there are more demands on you. On the other hand, is it about me, or is it about what other people were expecting of me? And I'm sure I'm not an only story. Millions, if not billions of people deal with this all the time. There was a point where I was thinking of religion in a way that looked very much like superimposed. Other people's standards, fine, you can say it's our ancestors, history, Bible, God. In the name of God. God wants you to eat this and don't eat this. Be kosher, keep Shabbat, and the many other rules that exist. The question I had was deeper than just, does it have expectations and demands? But does it fit into a person who is somewhat of a free spirit? Someone who has independent thinking. Now there's some people who just want to be told what to do. They have the different poetic terms for the masses are, and they let everybody fill in the blanks. That many people have to be told what to do. Even in politics, debates have raged and continue to rage. Can the people really elect democratically, freely, the right leaders? Do they know whom to elect? That's where the whole electoral college came into being. Because in a way, people can't always know who's the best type of leader, so they elect people, they represent them. I trust them to elect the right ones. Is that a true democratic process? So there is that attitude that not all people are equal in that sense, as much as the Constitution says all men are created equal. But some are more equipped, shall we say. That's the argument. I'm not making that argument. I'm just saying the argument that are more equipped, they're more knowledgeable. Would you equate someone who is absolutely ignorant or immature to be able to choose who the next leader of a country will be? Using that scenario. So based on that, people need rules. But what about those, let's call them the minority, that are more creative, less fettered, free spirits, bohemians, people who don't want to be told what to do? Is there a possibility and a potential risk of anarchy if everybody just does what they want? Of course there is. So I think all intelligent people know, even true free spirits, that there has to be something to coexist, red lights, green lights. But fundamentally, everybody is really on their own. I mean, you have the extremes. You have the Ayn Rand school of thought, of Atlas Shrugged, of the Fountainhead, of everyone's just individual and there's no one to tell you what to do. On the other hand, go back to religion. Religion absolutely tells you what to do. These are the values. Now, some people say there's some things in religion that are beautiful, and some things we should reject. This was very much part of the Enlightenment, the rebellion against religious authority that many saw as abusive and controlling and authoritative and just telling us what to do. Classic story, Galileo, free thinker. And he was forced to recant his scientific observations and scientific conclusions because it went against the church. So we have that in the back of our minds or in the front of our minds, that battle between demanding something that may not even be true, but it goes against our standard, against those that are in power. The classic joke, the skeptical or open-minded granddaughter is sitting at a Seder table with her grandfather, very devout and pious, and she says, "Grandpa, you're so religious that if you had to choose between God and the truth, who would you choose?" And without missing a beat, he says, God and the truth. So these things bothered me, and I'm sure bother many people. Till I came to start thinking about it. And I realized, one second here. Let's not talk about the people around me, the rabbis, the scholars, the sages, the authorities. Let's talk about history. Let's look into the Bible. Who is the first man of God, so to speak? Even though Adam and Eve in the Bible are created in the image of God, but the true first pioneer of monotheism that went around not just believing, but also propagating, teaching a life of virtue, of justice, was Abraham. And I looking at his life and I see, is he a conformist? Actually, he was a complete nonconformist. He was a real trailblazer. He was a pioneer. He actually disrupted and offended his community and his society. They wanted to put him away because he was threatening the authority of Nimrod, the kings and the leaders of the time. One second. So here's a man and his wife Sarah choosing a path of God, a path of higher values, not serving yourself, and he's the ultimate nonconformist. So what happened exactly? How did religion become a religion of conformity? Is it true then that once something becomes established, a bureaucracy, a corporation, it then lends itself to the same traps of any bureaucracy? There you have control and authority, and therefore the demand for conformity, not because God wants so, but because people want control. But then comes the biggest question. So how do you balance the two? Abraham chose a life of certain rules, chose a life of chesed, of kindness, of love. That's what he epitomized. Yet he was this free spirit. So he chose to follow rules. Not someone forced it upon him. It wasn't about imposition or threat or coercion or dogma. It was the free spirit in him, just like somebody who's a free spirit, who's a musician, and wants to spend 6 hours with an instrument, a piano or any other instrument. You'll say, what, are you forced to sit there? No, I want to sit here. That's how you create music. So discipline and rules and laws are not necessarily antithetical to free-spiritedness. Free-spiritedness, the antithetical is herd mentality, a conformity that's imposed upon someone, and especially by other human beings. So if you give in to your temptations, whatever they may be, in every whim, is that called being a free spirit? Maybe then you're enslaved to your own addictions. Whereas a person who's a free spirit and says, I'm committing to something greater than my needs, greater than my own self-interest, maybe that's the ultimate free spirit. In other words, it's not about, freedom is not just that you can do whatever you like, is that what you do is coming from within you, within your spirit. And that, it wasn't overnight, but I began to rethink and revisit the whole concept. So even the word religion, by definition, the stereotype, lends itself to the word conformity and all the other terms I used earlier. And if you really go negative, it usually evokes words like condescension and judgment and punishment and punitiveness and guilt and neurosis. Rules. That's why you'll find the statistics show 90% of Americans, or maybe the West in general, will say they have they believe in some form of spirituality, some form of God. Religion, 40% affiliate with. That's a pretty big discrepancy, because religion is associated with rituals, with tradition, with holidays, prayer, houses of worship, clergy. I mentioned other words before. And even at its best. But spirituality is related with free-spiritedness, soul, music, transcendence. And as long as these two worlds remain apart, you will always have this dichotomy. What Abraham teaches us, that they're not really apart. The key is to recognize that a true religion, and I don't even like the word religion, to be honest. I'm just using it, that's the word we're using. But a true experience of transcendence is actually the ultimate free-spiritedness. It's not just doing what you want, because what you want can be just as limiting as somebody who's trapped in a prison. It's a prison of your own making. It's not what you want, it's by connecting to something greater than yourself. That's what Abraham recognized. Now then, is it true that over time, those professing to follow Abraham's path, some of them became conformists and demanded conformity? Yes, it's true. But that's not necessarily the true path of Abraham. Because it's all about really discovering something greater than yourself. So therefore, does religion demand conformity? It depends what you define as religion. If you're talking about the bureaucratic corporate form, yes, it does, and not necessarily for good reasons. They may have some good reasons as well. Just like, as I said, etiquette, when you're at home, you're a certain place, there's certain etiquette. But I'm talking about the demanding of conformity, that don't make trouble, don't rock the boat, don't challenge, don't question, silencing people. True religion, if it's truly the path of God, God gave us minds, gave us hearts, gave us a certain independent spirit, whoever you are. So that's also part of embracing yourself. It's not just following the rules, it's also embracing your mind. Ask questions. You were taught, you were created that way, to think differently than others think. Now we have to find the balance. The words of Hillel, the balance between, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? That's the individual spirit that you are. But then the second half, if I'm only for myself, what am I? There's a synergy needed. Going back to the analogy of music, it's a perfect example. Every musician, every musical note has its unique role, and it's different than another musician's role. But when you have a real symphony is when they all work together in a coordinated fashion. Each one complementing the other while also bringing their unique contribution. And you know what really gets in the way? It's not just the conformity. It gets in the way is your own self-interest. The lack of humility, the lack of suspending yourself, feeling someone else is taking something from your turf. Jealousies, that competitiveness that doesn't allow us to both be ourselves while also being complemented with others and through others. So when you think about it, it actually provokes us to look at our lives in a very different way. Everybody in life has to follow certain guidelines and rules. Like I mentioned, no one has an issue. Why do by playing World Series right now? Why baseball players have to wear their uniform? Why can't they just come in their own garments, whatever it may be, or in the military, or in school uniforms, or other dress codes we have in different situations? Because everybody understands there's a certain need for uniformity, for branding, whatever the reason may be. But the point is, you still come with your unique self no matter what garment you wear. The problem is when you become defined by the conformity, and that's not what the point is. Conformity here, when you're playing musical notes based on when you're playing music based on certain notes, that's not conforming to the notes. The notes are helping you. The structure is helping you actually to transcend structure. Now, can you play by ear without notes? Of course you can. But the notes are not meant to limit you. They're meant to help you grow. It's like learning by trial and error, learning what others have done. Following the best practices is just helping you not make mistakes, and then you can spread your wings and soar and reach heights, unprecedented heights. And that's really the ultimate objective. So Abraham, in that sense, has a tremendous lesson. And I think it's a balance. What happened was that, yes, when you're imposed upon, you're enslaved by whoever it may be, whether it's a political leader, whether it's a religious leader, whether it's whatever it is, you're going to rebel, or at least some people will rebel against it. The question is that when you rebel, are you also going to throw out the baby with the bathwater? Because there are certain guidelines, there are certain values that are valuable. So we have to find the correct balance where you allow the individual to express themselves while also embracing something that brings us the common denominator that connects us all. And that's also part of the process. But that word that always rings true and always reigns supreme, the Hebrew word, I've often mentioned it, the word bittul, B-I-T-T-U-L, which is more than just humility and modesty. It's suspending yourself in the face of something greater. That provides us, number one, with discovering our true self, not the one defined by other people's expectations and demands, parents, educators, society, media, social media. And the second thing it provides is not to get trapped in yourself. Self-expression is important. Independence is important. Free-spiritedness is important. But not to get trapped there either, and recognize that we complement each other. And there is a need for flexibility, and there is a need for yielding, and at times actually deferring to another. That's the key to a relationship. A quote I often quote from Rabbi Mendel Kotzker, the Kotzker Rebbe. Beautiful quote, where he says, if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I will not be and you will not be. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, I will be and you will be. If my identity is defined by you, and juxtaposing around you and your expectations or demands or needs, or being different than you, then it's not being generated from within me. So I'm not really being me. And if you're defined by me exactly the same way, then you're not really being you. What you want to have is, me is here, you are here. And we come together and become stronger in the process. That synergy. A very powerful self, but also a very powerful selflessness. And they're not a contradiction. And the reason they're not a contradiction is because the true self of a human being is not just selfish needs. It's not just the id, survival of the fittest. It's fulfilling the higher purpose for which you are here. And when you have that in mind, and you're a vehicle, a channel for that higher purpose, then other people are not a contradiction to you. On the contrary, the more confident and secure you are from within, the easier it is to coexist, and more than that, to actually benefit from others. That's how we build true self-confidence. So I'll be the first to admit there are many things in the religious world, or for that matter, any community, that is not completely healthy. Not, however, because of the standards. It's because of the people. People can distort things. They misunderstand. Why do you have to have a fear-driven education? Why are we afraid of people's questions? That can come from human being frailties. And it can cause a lot of damage. But when you understand what really the real standard is, the real meaning of it all, it's about becoming the best you can be, while also recognizing it's not all about you or about me. And that's what we thank Abraham, the pioneer, the true pioneer, who paved the way. Now, on one hand, it was extremely difficult. He had no one to turn to. I'm sure he found his mentors, but it wasn't like an established place to go to. On the other hand, he also was not jaded by anything that was negative. What was it? He was jaded by the pagan world, which he came to discover with his wisdom through a process of elimination, that it can't be self-worship that defines reality. And then he discovered through that process of elimination that it can be even the sky itself, sun and the moon, the celestial bodies, that there's something greater than all the sum of the parts. And that when you, so-called, allow yourself to dissolve and be absorbed in that higher reality, you then become an extension of it. And that's why we still talk about Abraham almost 4,000 years later. So with that, we learn tremendous things from the biblical events around Abraham's life that we read nowadays in the Bible. these weeks. And may we all learn to be Abrahams like that, pioneers in our own way. Be you. Dare to be you. And while at the same time, you'll discover how you appreciate others even more so when you are you. You were born an original. Don't become a copy. Simon Jacobson, Meaning for Life Center. Always an honor to share a few words. Meaningforlife.com is our website. Check us out for this and many other programs on topics cover the entire spectrum of life. And please share with others. Pay it forward. And of course, as always, I'd love to hear from you. Thoughts, comments, suggestions, questions. Be blessed. Be you, because we all need you. Be well.